So this panel, I've kind of renamed it called Embracing Technology, Digital Transformation and Digitization of the Insurance Brokerage Process. And we have 4 people up here. I know you can read their bio, so I'm not going to spend more than a few seconds on it. I'm probably going to do this wrong, but well, Jason, I think, gave a little bit of a background about himself. He started broker distribution for Aviva in January 2016. He leads the national distribution brokerage for the company up in Canada. Chip is the CEO of Founders Choice, Trusted Choice, nation's largest online marketing platform for IAs and IA insurance companies. Pretty interesting. Kim has about 30 years of experience dealing with many different property casualty fields in the Canadian insurance industry. And Aaron is a co-founder and CEO of Matic, which is an interesting company, an industry leader in mobile and online delivery of homeowners insurance. I was actually at a conference a couple days ago and had a chance to listen to Aaron talk about his product and services, so it's pretty interesting. So why don't we dive in? And I'm sorry to do this, Jason, because you prompted a couple questions. So how do you get the brokers to play the role that you talked about, right? Get more active, and you talked about the fact there's one group of 21 out of 25 people, a data scientist. So how do you get the brokers to take a more active role, and can you change or create demand for products that might not be in the marketplace today?
So the first part of your question, how do you get... One of the things I find is, whether it's insurance companies, insurance brokers, or any similar group of people with kind of the same interests or the same industry, groupthink doesn't work for me. Right? If you try and get a big group of people in a room and try and convince everybody to go through that door, some people are just inherently going to say no. Some people are going to go for it without thinking about it, and some people are going to do whatever in the middle. So for us, personally, I think, spending time having relevant conversations with each individual broker is actually the way I think I approach it and Aviva approaches it, and I know a number of the other companies in Canada approach it, because not one solution is going to fit everybody. So we look at a curve of how digitally savvy, how digitally invested brokers are, and if you're at one end of the spectrum, we're sitting down talking to you about different solutions than if you're at the other end of the spectrum. And I think as long as everybody has a clear view on what Aviva wants to achieve and what the industry wants to achieve on a broader scale, hopefully everybody can sign up to, okay, I'm being asked to join the journey here. And if I'm not going to do it, it's because it's not relevant for me, or it's not compelling for me based on what my values are or what I want to achieve in my business. The one thing I'd just say to add on to that is, it's more evident than ever that, I think for decades, insurance companies have treated brokers as this big gray mass of intermediaries. And the difference in what people are trying to do with their business, what their trajectory and timeline is, whether they want to grow, whether they want to prepare it for sale, that's never been as significant as it is now. In terms of new products, we're in a space where it's going to be an ongoing challenge for intermediaries to sell new products, especially in our industry, which is terrible for developing new products and bringing new thinking to customers' insurance needs. So I just think, actually, and again, I apologize, this is experience based solely on Canada, we've seen instances where new products have been brought to the market, and the folks that resist early on, there was more people resisting 2 years ago when we launched a flood product than there are resisting to some of the new products that are coming out in the market now. And I think that's just, they see the cycle of, okay, if one company launches this, the other companies are going to follow because they're going to have to follow. So better to try and think now how to get ahead of this than wait a year and miss the opportunity.
By the way, if anybody has any questions from the audience, please, we encourage that. Kim, oh, please, go ahead.
I mean, I'll take a shot at that question because obviously Trusted Choice represents 20,000 agents and brokers across the country, and my easiest answer is you don't have to manage them. They're motivated right now. How many agents or brokers in the room right now? Feeling motivated? Yeah, feeling motivated. No need to worry. That's why we're all here. Okay. So actually, it's exactly groups like this in this meeting and what we're doing and why we're coming together that is motivating agents and brokers to adapt right in front of us, and I'm here to help.
So you've created an online platform. How has that been in terms of the adoption of what you're doing?
Well, we're very lucky because we're a part of the family of the Big I, which that's how we have 20,000 plus agents and brokers. We're owned by some of the largest insurance companies in the world, including, I think there's a representative from Travelers back there. She's one of my bosses, probably doesn't know it, but I'd like to meet you later. And so we launched this thing, and we invited all of the Trusted Choice or Big I agents to sign up. So you're sort of automatically in at the base level if you're an agent or broker member, and then you can sort of opt in to be more aggressively participating. We have 5,000 of those agents that participate at a premium level, where they're actually contributing. They have a profile on the platform and so forth.
Out of 20?
Out of 20,000, 5,000.
So why is that? Why do you think that you've got 5 out of 20? Is this the typical, not 80-20 rule, but you have a series of producers, A, B, and C producers?
Yeah. I mean, the other thing, to just being totally honest, is a third of agents and brokers, the whole insurance industry, of course, we have an age challenge, right? So you have a number of agents and brokers that are managed by people that realistically are going to retire in the next 5 years, something like that. They're not trying to transform their whole business. You've got a whole new generation of younger folks. There's the people in the middle. So it's probably a one-third, quick, leaning forward, sort of medium adopters, and then frankly a third that are okay to live by 1970s standards. So, so we're happy with 5,000 for right now. That's good.
Okay. Kim, I wanted to ask you to chime in on the first point, but you look like you're ready to talk, so why don't you offer your thoughts on this?
So I'm also here representing the Insurance Brokers Association of Canada, and our membership is around 36,000 brokers across the country. IBAC did a major survey in late 2016, and just to take the pulse of brokers, our membership, and the number 2 priority, and when I say the number 2 priority, it ranks right behind the number 1 priority, obviously, but was technology. So brokers, they live in the real world, they see what they can do on their smartphone, and then they're thinking about, well, why can't we do this for our clients? So it is a top of mind issue with brokers. There's a lot of impediments in their way, and oftentimes it is BMSs that are not being progressive enough or being able to provide the connectivity that brokers need in a timely fashion to meet the new challenges, segmentation being one of them.
Okay, so I want to swing to this guy right here. So you take a different approach to this whole process, right? So,
well, no disrespect to people,
so
but I fundamentally
right, go ahead.
disagree with a lot of, not everything. I think you guys are right. Like, brokers need technology. There's a huge gap between technology, but what's the problem you're trying to solve? At the end of the day, you said it, how do you add value to the customers? And so what we think is, how do you get distribution? And so just what Matic does is we integrate directly with mortgage lenders, insurance carriers, to provide home insurance at the point of sale. So literally, when you're getting a mortgage, when you need insurance, is the value we add. We're letting you know what are the best carriers and what are the best coverages for you when you need it. That's true value. So how is a broker going to compete with that? Now they should. Like if there's a relationship, great. How do you scale that? One way is technology, and you absolutely need that. We built our own agency management platform, as an example, because we had to, because you're absolutely right there. But if you build this great technology, how are you going to train 20,000 people how to use one technology? And you said this great, groupthink. How are you going to have 20,000 people like that technology? It's a really hard challenge. And the industry shows in 2 years in the States that their average insurance agent from McKinsey, they said 2 years, which I don't understand how that's possible, half the agents are going to go away because of retirement. So I think
Wait. Say that again.
According to McKinsey, in 2 years, half the agents are going to retire.
Half the
I don't know how
retire.
That's right.
Okay.
It's not quite right.
That doesn't make sense to me.
There is an age challenge.
That doesn't make sense to me, but I guess my point is this, is like, how I look at this is, what is the true value you're trying to solve? And a relationship is strong. How do you scale that?
It really is about the customer engagement, right? I mean, however you're going to address it. Go ahead.
Agents and brokers need to adapt to exactly what you're talking about. So one of the biggest inefficiencies in the current process, Jason was talking about what are the value propositions. We spend too much time bumbling around trying to find somebody to help. You found somebody at the moment when they need help. You need to put those two things together, because what I'm guessing you don't necessarily have is an expert that can sort of lend comfort You had a great list of value propositions. I would add one more, which is trust or accountability. So when you buy something as complicated as insurance, and let's suppose it's for your small business, and you put your life savings into this thing, $200,000, whatever it was, you don't want to walk away from the purchase of the insurance for that business and go, I wonder if I did that right. You want to have somebody, Mary or whatever her name is, that was your professional insurance agent and advisor to have gone through it and say, we talked about your business, this is what you need, we've gone to the market, these are the right prices, go home and sleep well. Well, that's an extra value proposition we got to add.
Well, let me just add to that, because I 100% agree with you. That is why our NPS score is 88. I would dare say that's the highest NPS score in this room. We're not a carrier, it's easier. And the reason for that is because we do sell trust. We do call you if you want, and that's the difference, if you want it, and we'll say, hey Chip, you're a first-time home buyer, we understand, we do this all the time. Oh, you're refinancing your house? Do you actually understand what your coverages mean? Let's explain it to you. You don't want to talk to us? No problem, we're on your time. So we do that too, and I agree completely. We need to sell trust as an industry. I just think that, for me, again, going back to the problem is, what is the value that I'm giving to someone? And that relationship is a value.
I would argue in that case, you are an agent.
We are an agent. No, we're totally
Absolutely.
He's a digital agent,
the next generation of agents.
And that's how we think about ourselves, as the agency of the future, right? And so,
See, to me, I don't look at this whole thing as disruption. I look at it as enablement, really, in many respects, right? So, but you're solving something that perfectly with technology, right?
my thesis is the true disruption in insurance is not technology, it's distribution. That's where I live.
But I think that it's about enabling more efficient distribution in the marketplace.
Totally.
Okay, so should we move on, or we want to keep, any questions at all? Somebody's got to have, I can't, the lights are, maybe you can get a microphone to this person here. I think I see an arm raised. Can you hold on, please? Hold on one second. Go ahead.
Will all customers engage digitally?
Sorry, would you repeat that?
Will all customers engage digitally?
So I can start that off.
Well, my answer is no, but go ahead.
No, of course not. And Chip, you hit the nail on the head. And I think fundamentally disagree is a strong word on certain items, but you hit the nail on the head. It's trust, right? So it just depends on the person. You put a great slide that says 80% or 70% start online, or they shop, or 5 times more shop online. They definitely shop online, but biggest home purchase you're ever going to make, or biggest transaction you most likely ever make, there's a good opportunity. Again, what's the problem I'm solving for? Do I feel comfortable? And if the answer is yes, then I will shop online. If the answer is no and I want more help, then that's no. So that could depend on A, the person, and B, the customer experience. If I go to this website and I get every single answer to my question solved right there, I'm not going to go talk to somebody because I feel comfortable. If I don't, then I'm going to call. And again, so the answer is, will someone go online? It's if they trust that website enough.
Yeah, I'll just add, we have a mantra to get the right risk, right account, customer, to the right agent. I would count Aaron as an agent in this case, at the right time. That last little bit, by the way, is where we fall down all over the place. And he's got a great point. If you can, when that person needs it, and going to your question, when that person needs help, if they're in a situation where they're ready to engage mobily, and that's when they need the help, and you can connect them to the right agent that can help them, or the right provider, I'll use that word for a minute, and give them the right product at the right value, and you can communicate that level of trust where they feel like, you know what, I'm not going to get ripped off, and I'm going to go home and sleep well. Put all those things together in one moment, sure, digital's perfect. If it needs to be old-fashioned face-to-face, then that's what it needs to be. The customer rules.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a sliding scale too when you look at the journey of a consumer. When you don't have a lot to insure, you don't have a lot to lose. As you go through life, you accumulate more wealth, and some people do a better job of it than others, but you become more concerned with the quality of advice that you're receiving. And I think people are going to want that personal touch and not talk to necessarily an AI.
I was going to say one more thing on that, and actually, because I kind of poo-pooed the agency for a second. I really think the future of an insurance agent, if you're more an IA, a traditional IA, is that service to that higher end clientele. It's that advisory, but again, that's less knocking on doors. That's more of, well, it's more knocking. The mid-market goes away, and I think that higher market becomes, to your point, the more valuable your assets are, the more you're going to want to talk to someone who's been doing it for a while.
The mid-market, that's interesting. So one of the questions I do have is what product lines can be automated? I mean, we're talking about, things here that I think are pretty important to consider, right? I mean, so does the small commercial become automated? Then does the mid-market, upper market commercial not become automated? I mean, there's so many people talking about the direct market, small BOP policies, things of that nature. And there's been attempts at putting together online companies to do that. So what are all your thoughts on, what can and what cannot or should not be automated?
I mean, I think quite often people look at that and just, to your point, personal insurance, small commercial insurance. I don't think it's about size. I think it's about simplicity or complexity. So you can have a large commercial risk. If it's pretty straightforward and there's multiple plants somewhere or factories or distribution, whatever it may be, I don't see any reason why that can't be automated. And again, it comes back to, it can be automated because the information can be collated in a really meaningful way without needing human intervention. You don't need to manually add up all these locations or whatever. It can just, that data is aggregated. Anything that involves, different levels of complexity around coverage or risk management, I think, and that can apply for somebody that's a high-value homeowner, high-value personal insurance versus high-value commercial. I think it's the complexity versus simplicity that right now, that's the spectrum.
Any other thoughts on it? I'll just add, I totally agree with what these guys have said. I'll add one more thing. We record about 10,000 customer phone calls a month, and we have learned so much from that. And one of the mistakes I think we make in our business is we sort of take a typical customer in our mind, like, oh, a homeowner, they have a house, and they have 2 cars, and maybe they have a dog, and but the problem is, actually, when we listen to those calls, you can't believe the majority of people have some special situation. I'll give you an example. Well, my son's at college, and he's technically borrowing a car that belongs to our uncle. I mean, it's an endless thing. Well, my neighbor parks his boat at the end of my dock. Is that a problem for me? It just goes on and on and on. So, I absolutely agree automation in some cases, but I just can't believe how many times the exception seems to be the rule more than the average.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, I'm thinking about travel insurance and from a Canadian perspective. So we have what we call snowbirds. So these are Canadians that want to get away from the cold. And so
Not just Canadians, by the way.
Okay, they head south. Now, if you're employed, your travel insurance is usually, your out-of-country medicals, what we technically call it, is normally provided by your employer, so you don't have to worry about it. But if you're retired, you're not employed anymore, and now you have to buy it privately. So a couple of problems that I can see there is that these are medically based applications, and I don't know how you could suck in private medical information into the application to automate the process. Maybe you can, but I think there's some privacy issues, at least in Canada, revolving around that information. The other thing, and I'm thinking maybe an AI might be better at this than people. The elderly, there's nothing that they like to talk about more than their aches and pains. And on the travel application, there's 30, 40 medically based questions that if you're talking to somebody that's 70, there's going to be a lot to talk about. So maybe an AI could have that conversation much better than a human because you need a lot of patience.
Okay, so legacy systems, right? We all are familiar with them. I actually used to sell an IBM 4300 series back in the earlier days. So a lot of firms, a lot of insurance companies have legacy systems, and finding the people, I've done a little bit of research on this, and finding the people to take care of people who understand COBOL or Fortran, it's not as bad as people think. But how do you integrate within these legacy systems to do the things that you might want to do as a company, as a firm providing products, APIs, for example, to your client base? How does that interface take place? I mean, so I don't know if anybody has any thoughts about that at all.
I'll go based off what I was at a conference yesterday, and one of the insurance carriers mirrored exactly what you said, which is carriers are spending $50 billion or something ridiculous the next 4 or 5 years to take their systems from legacy to the next step. So I think carriers understand this and they're moving towards that. And even today, again, there's middleware. I mean, we integrate with many APIs, and their APIs, right? They have a middleware in their legacy system. So, as they move to the new systems, they'll just remove the middleware and things like that. So it's actually been pretty, from our perspective, and again, we're in a very narrow minded. You know, we're homeowners, but it's been pretty rock solid actually. The Care's been doing a pretty great job considering of their systems are from before you were born.
You know, it's interesting because one of the things that I've heard at a couple conferences is the cybersecurity issues with a lot of the newer systems, because a lot of the older systems, the documentation in place for those systems was much more substantial than the systems sold today. I mean, so anyway, anybody else any thoughts on?
I'll just add, I think some of the, Jason talked about the agency management systems and the ones that have been around for a long time. We all know who they are. I really am impressed with some of the smaller ones. I think they're making good progress, and I would say that across the board, on the carrier side too. Lots of different integration tools that I've seen that people are working on. Probably a few, they're going to display something in that room over there. So I'm encouraged. I don't have an exact answer, but I think things are looking really good.
Any questions out there? Any questions at all? Yes, please.
Just wanted to make a comment about the online versus the agent. A client doesn't always know what they don't know, and that's whether it's the first-time homeowner or the middle-aged business person that's got 20 employees. So I see the challenge. I think it's great that we have the platforms, that we're doing a lot of things digital, but I don't think, well, you can say, I guess the term that we use is you can talk about maybe making it more economical to sell more insurance, but in the end, you won't be able to keep those customers if they find that it didn't really work for them. I get clients all the time who go online. I won't even mention what I do, but they just go online, no problem there, but then they start talking to me and they go, oh, I didn't realize, yeah, there's this, if I do this, there's this problem here, or if I don't do this, or what about the taxes, or what about the umbrella policy, those kinds of things. So just a comment about that.
No, I think that's really smart, and I think that's certainly going back to our NPS score. Right now, there's a hybrid approach, and we find that all the time where you don't know everything, and as you talk to a customer, they more and more unravels. And I think you had mentioned something similar. So there's not a perfect solution, but again, ours isn't. I want to make it clear. What we're doing isn't saying, hey, digital's better. That's it. What we're saying is being at the point of when you're needed is better. And that is what we tried to accomplish.
I think digital isn't, I fundamentally think digital is not about cutting out the engagement with an agent or a broker. It's just making that engagement more relevant. It's not relevant for me to spend 15 minutes on the phone answering 20 questions. It is relevant for me to spend 15 minutes on the phone with somebody who's challenging or adding value to the decisions I've made. And if you go to the other end of the spectrum and people talk about AI and all the great things that AI is going to do, and yeah, that's great. AI is going to take away a lot of the admin and the process and the data gathering or whatever it may be. One of the risks of AI is learned bias. So if learned or inherent bias that develops, so if you aren't engaging with somebody and actually a system sees that most people buy, I'll pick an example, only $1 million worth of liability coverage for their auto insurance, it might start to recommend that because 9 times out of 10 that's what people are buying. It might miss the intricacies, your point around, well, actually that's not going to work because whatever personal situational circumstances exist.
Yeah, but shouldn't that, go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, I was just going to kind of tag on to these comments that insurance is an interesting transaction. At the point of sale or the point of applying for the policy, if you don't get the application process right, or if you buy the wrong coverage and a claim happens, you can't fix that. You have to live with that. And that can be $1 million or a multi-million-dollar mistake.
Well, you're all nodding your heads up here. So why? You can't make the changes before? I mean, you can't make changes to
After
it?
the claim comes in, no, that will not work.
No, not before the claim comes in, but you can't make changes before
You
that?
can, but you don't know that, to her point. You don't know you made a mistake yet, right? So you think you're fine.
That's a good point.
And then the problem happens, and I think Kim's exactly right. This is too high of a stakes purchase. It's not like buying a book on Amazon. You want to know you did it right.
To Jason's point, though, if I'm going to get a mortgage and I give my mortgage lender all the information that the carrier is going to ask me, as a borrower, do I really need to tell my insurance agent the exact same thing I just told someone else? And I completely agree. Removing the administrative work is the next.
Isn't that the real key? Don't you really want to make the producer much more efficient at what that person does and take away a lot of the administrative stuff?
Yeah, and we have agents. I mean, so we have a lot of agents. So they're just highly, highly effective.
I would say anybody in the audience, if you're saddling your producers with any administrative things that they really don't need to do, you need to rethink what you're doing with that.
Because you touched, I think you said something that was really important, which is this isn't, I think you said this is a distribution challenge, right? What's the problem you're trying to solve? And, you know, for me, how does somebody that doesn't have a relationship with the point of sale of somebody needing insurance and information that's transacted at that time get ahead of that? And the most stark example of that for me at the moment is in the auto industry. So Volvo, Porsche, General Motors, several others have come out and said, you can buy a subscription service now. You don't need to buy a car anymore. You can pay every month. You can change cars if you want, multiple times a year. And included in that monthly purchase is your insurance. Now, whether or not they're self-insuring or partnering with an insurer or a reinsurer or partnering with a really well-established or a digital broker or a series of agents, it's kind of irrelevant. What's relevant is, if you're not that insurance partner, I don't know how you can compete. I don't know how you can get your foot in the door to prove value.
Is this in Canada?
No, actually, it's more in the US than Canada.
We have situations in Canada, British Columbia comes to mind, where brokerages actually have a satellite office in an auto dealership. Now, that's the old school way of solving a problem. Your way, I think, makes a lot of sense. So, you know, having somebody sit at a dealership waiting for somebody to buy a car so they can provide service is maybe not the most effective use of that person's time. If you can automate it, great.
Well, look at what Tesla's doing, right? I mean, in essence, with the insurance product as part of the whole purchase, so it's interesting. Any other questions? Yes. Oh,
Hello. So I live in the UK, and I'm a very typical insurance buyer. I do it all online. I don't use any advice. I just do it myself. So my question to you all, how do you buy your insurance?
I was going to ask that question also.
Beat you.
Well, let's start down here.
I buy mine from a trusted choice independent insurance agent.
He better say that. He buys it from himself.
No, I don't. I am a licensed agent, but I don't buy it for myself. Because then I wouldn't have the benefit of holding someone else accountable. So,
Do you buy anything online at all, as far as insurance? Have you?
no.
Okay. Kim?
I have bought travel insurance online.
Okay. Travel insurance? Okay.
Like out of country medical.
Yeah. I know the answer to this question.
I just go to one of my agents and say, take care of it,
Yeah.
to your point.
Yep. Interesting.
I rotate my insurance every year with a different broker because it allows me to have a different lens on the brokers that we deal with. So
Yeah.
I go through both.
And my answer is travel insurance primarily. There's a couple of investors that I've dealt with over the years. They're younger investors, and they purchase Lemonade's products because they're so incredibly easy. And I said, well, what's the claims process been like? He said, it hasn't happened so far. So, but why do you think that in the UK it's so much easier for people to, you.
Hello? Sorry, the microphone keeps going off. Well, that was my question, actually. Why do you think we in the UK tend to buy things online and do it all ourselves? What are the... I think I know the answer to the question, and why you guys don't.
Well, you got to give your answer first then.
You're handicapped,
Well,
yes?
it's highly regulated. Brand doesn't really mean much anymore, and it's all about price.
Yeah.
And actually, our digital experience is far richer, I'd say. Because I've also lived in the US, and I've experienced that as well.
I think the UK is the most hyper-competitive insurance market in the world. Partly, a big part of that is because of lack of regulation or lack of price product regulation, different kind of federal and prudential regulation, but that's a big, big factor. We see the competitive, like the churn of new ideas and new propositions in the UK, I think is richer than anywhere else. The price point as well. You know, the average car insurance in Canada is way higher than the average car insurance in the UK, and I think it's just because there's been way more multi-distribution, way more competitive forces that have come into the UK market. You know, if you look at the different distribution channels, the disruption that digital aggregators created, just that phenomena I don't think has been seen anywhere else as much as the UK.
The websites in the UK, or the comparison shopping websites, are far, far superior than what they have here. And it's more of a, like you said, it's more of a price culture than I would say, although, it also depends on the product too. And for home specifically, where it affects me is the bank can actually say, the bank can also sell insurance, where in the U.S. they cannot, which makes a market for companies like myself.
Hold on 1 sec. Is the microphone to you?
Just to that point, do you not think the UK represents this issue in a nutshell, being that at home, you don't really need that parochial expertise because a lot more one products do fit all sizes. We don't have weird weather patterns. Most people have the same experience. Most people drive the same types of cars. And so you don't need that local expertise, where I think there is a sort of balancing act here.
Yeah, I don't think, again, when you look at, you can't turn the television on for more than a few minutes without seeing a, aggregator, one of the websites advertising. But what they're advertising is not dissimilar to what brokers should be advertising. It's just being delivered in a far more instantaneous, digital, web-based format. Choice, to be able to get the, whatever it is, the Expedia of insurance or the Travelocity equivalent of, okay, you put in a few pieces of information, you get all of these options. That's, to me, what brokers do. I don't see a big difference between that and what brokers will do in the future, and actually what our most digitally focused and, in some instances, highest growth brokers are doing. They're not doing it with human touch. They're not speaking to everybody. That process has been automated and digitized.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have a question. I guess I want to bring up the generational question. I am an actuary, so I work in insurance, as I'm sure most of us do. But my friends know zero about insurance. So they don't go to an insurance agent because they don't know that they need insurance. Like, I have life insurance. I couldn't tell you a single other of my friends who have life insurance. It's like, well, are your parents going to pay for end-of-life expenses if something's to happen? So I've had those conversations with some friends, but that's not my job. But so how are you reaching people? Or is there, maybe that's a gap that people in this room are trying to answer. How do you reach the people who don't know what they don't know? And I'm going to be honest, I'm in the similar boat of I shop online first for most things. I can't buy most insurance there, but I guess just how do you reach those people who don't go to an agent and say, do I need insurance?
All right, everybody gets a shot.
Yeah, I'm going to actually add on to your question, because I don't just think it's about not needing insurance or not knowing what you need. Actually, the number of young people getting driver's licenses is plummeting. The amount of new car sales is radically changing. So where I grew up, my first introduction to insurance was needing car insurance. Right? I had a £2,000 car, and apparently I needed £4,000 worth of insurance coverage. Right? So that's usually people's first introduction to insurance. That's fundamentally changing for a lot of people. So I just think that compounds the issue that you're raising. I'll let the other guys answer your question.
So as a part of the generation that you're in, there's a couple things. So I can't speak to life. I'm like Rain Man. I only know home and everything that touches me. So auto, umbrella, things like that. But I've spoken with a lot of panels, and they're building new products because it's more, and everyone in this room has probably heard of on-demand insurance and things like that. So it's trying to figure out two things. Number one, how to get them when they need it. So, or telling them, hey, this is a time when you'll need it, right? So being at some sort of value prop. And then two, to your other point, which I thought was perfect, which is I shop online, but I can't purchase it online. Well, I've spoken with so many carriers, specifically in life actually, who want to change that. And so when I was at a conference yesterday speaking on a panel, and they were talking about how their underwriting guidelines haven't really changed in 50 years. So if you're going to have a digital product, you might need to change those a little bit. And so, and carriers get this, and so they're changing it. So it'll take time, but it's, again, getting at the point of sale, whatever that sale is for that product, and being able to fulfill digitally if they want to.
I'm thinking in terms of a lifetime relationship with a potential client. And I don't think the insurance business has done a great job of cultivating those sorts of lifetime relationships. And we're missing the boat in that area. So part of it's education. Concern I have with some of the new entrants, the digital entrants, is that I'm not sure I think they're oversimplifying the purchase of insurance. So they're covering your camera when you walk out the door. But as an insurance broker, I know that claims happen when you're sleeping at night. and your camera's right beside you or in the next room. Liability's not being covered. So I think there's a risk of what we're seeing happen right now is that there's an oversimplification and people are walking out the door, making a digital purchase, thinking they're covered, and they're not really holistically covered. You know, there's gaps, and that really concerns me.
But I think isn't one of the goals of some of those situations where if they get somebody to have one product, eventually they might add a second or third product, they might, as part of the whole buying process.
They might, but I'm talking about products that are fundamentally poorly designed that are being sold digitally. So again, I think you need that professional advice, and whether it's a broker that's guiding a startup on you know, how to package the policy or how to package the coverages rather, there needs to be some professional guidance there.
I'll take a different tact on your question and just say that I think we've done a poor job as an industry in educating the public about what is insurance for and how do you buy it, what's the smart way to buy it, why does it cost what it costs, where's the money going. There's a number of companies now that you know, that are starting to sort of call attention to that, like how much of your money goes to pay claims and so forth, and what happens to the profits, and I won't mention names, but they're bringing up interesting questions, right? So I'm going to say that we should have done a better job 20 years ago at educating the consumers about how, you know, what's the difference between an independent agent and a captive agent.
I would argue that what's also happening is the buying process has changed. Social media is driving a lot of things, and maybe parts of the insurance industry aren't paying attention to how people want to buy products.
Sure. From a marketing standpoint, just when you go to Vegas and you play 21, don't say insurance is the worst bet in the house. I mean, right? That translates.
That's a great point. Yeah. We should actually pay Vegas to make that a great bet. That's what we should do.
We have about 4 minutes left, so any other questions? Yes.
Just one for me. So, Jason, you started by saying that you know, carriers are not particularly good at product development. Chip, you've got 20,000 people explaining very complicated products to consumers. In the middle, we're investing in technology to try and automate and simplify that. Fundamentally, are carriers doing enough to build, you know, customer-centric, simple solutions?
It's a great question, and I think the simple answer is no, and I could move on, but you're looking for a bit more texture. No, they're not. I think, you know, separate manufacturer versus distributor, right? So what are the core principles, things that an insurance company needs to be great at, the basics, right? There's lots of great stuff around digitization and new tech and new partnerships, but if we don't move on in what I think the comment earlier was digitizing a bad product or an irrelevant product or a product that isn't resonating, digitizing 43 pages of a policy documentation doesn't really help anybody, right? It's bringing it, making it relevant. And I use auto insurance as maybe one example. Canada is a challenging space for this because of auto regulation across different provinces. But if I think about what happened, I don't know, 10 years, 15 years ago, whatever it was with cell phones, right? It was, you had a plan and you paid your annual plan, and then it became a monthly plan and then a weekly plan. Now it's a per second plan, and now they've actually gone, you've just got a ton of data, see what you need and you use. Auto insurance hasn't followed that cycle, and yet, what's the stat? 96% of people's cars are parked at any given time. So if you think about, you know, the telematics and usage-based insurance in insurance, I think is a bit of a, I think it's a bit of a red herring, because it's not really usage-based insurance. If I pay exactly what I would have paid to begin with, but I can get a bit of a discount depending on how I drive my car, that's not true usage-based insurance. True usage-based insurance is, if I don't use my car, I don't pay any insurance, right? So I think one of the things that I have a view of, a bit of an optimistic view is, at least where I work and some of the other companies I'm close to in Canada and elsewhere, there's some really interesting talent from outside of the insurance industry coming into the insurance industry now. There's always going to be a time and a place and a space for people that really understand the fundamentals of insurance, but people to understand what's meaningful in terms of when you build a proposition, what's going to make them come to you rather than, you know, they have to come to you because they have no other choice. And I think it's people from outside the industry and some fresh thinking, not losing all the fundamentals of insurance, but properly building on that that's going to make a difference.
We have about 1 minute left. Anybody else have any quick thoughts on that? Okay? No? Okay. I think I think we are all set, and I'd like to thank the panel for a great discussion. I thought it was terrific. So you're all going to be around for the rest of the day, right? So if anybody has any questions, you want to chat with these gentlemen, they'll all be here. Thanks.